So firstly, this class, it's a little delayed, but this class is lovingly sponsored by Lisa and Lorraine in honor of Musia becoming a bat mitzvah on August 24th, in honor of Mia's first birthday, that's Lisa's granddaughter, and a healthy and sweet new year for everyone. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Lorraine. You're gonna have to show us a picture of this first birthday.
Okay, and I forgot that I did that, so thank you. It's my pleasure to do that.
I also want to personally dedicate tonight's class in honor of the Hebrew birthday of my oldest son, Meir. He turns 15 tonight on the 16th of Elul. So I want to wish him a year of growth and success and happiness and only good things. And of course, that's 15 years of me being a mom. So that's a milestone for me too.
And he's
Lastly,
your oldest?
he's my oldest.
Wow, 15 years. Congratulations. Is he home or away?
He's away.
Okay.
He left last week. Um, Lastly, on a more somber note, um, I want to dedicate tonight's class in memory of the souls lost in Israel today. Some of you may have heard there was a terrible terrorist attack in Jerusalem, as well as a few soldiers in Gaza who lost their lives. So, in memory of all those lost and as a merit for a speedy recovery for those who are still battling for their lives. Hi, Lorraine. Welcome. Okay, so let's begin. Let's start with a review because it's been a while. We're in a cluster of chapters that are dealing with the quest for happiness, right? How do we maintain happiness in the face of struggle, internal struggle, external struggle, shame, guilt, all of these things that can make us lose our stamina and lose our vigor and lose our excitement? How do we keep going in face of all those? So every chapter took a different angle and gave different solutions, with another set of reasons why we might feel down and another bunch of solutions of how we can reframe it and look at it differently and hopefully get out of that rut. Tonight, some of you might remember when we did this a long time ago, we talk about something that the Tanya considers worse than sadness. Anyone remember what that is? What could possibly be worse than feeling really, really sad?
Apathy.
Very good. Thank
Just
you.
in your joy.
Apathy. Not feeling at all. So long as you're feeling sad, you're still feeling. You're feeling sad, but you're feeling. When we reach a point of apathy, it's I don't even feel anymore. As we've quoted many times in this class, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? I don't know, and I don't care. From the Tanya's perspective, apathy is probably one of the worst states to be in. And actually the Hebrew term that the Tanya uses for it is timtum halev. I know we spoke about tzimtzum. This is timtum. Literally means like a clogged heart, like the system's stuck. Something is just stuffed. But before we get into it of how it happens and how the Tanya suggests that we deal with it, let's discuss for a second, from our experience, our collective experience, when is it typically that people find faith or turn to faith? We all know people who their entire lives, they either believed in God or they didn't believe, or they didn't know if they believed, or they never thought too much if they believed. And then it comes to a point in their life where they really start turning to faith. They start studying more, they start doing more, they start caring more. What usually makes that happen?
Some challenging experience.
Very good. It's usually a challenging experience. But isn't it interesting that when it comes to faith and spiritual connection, we almost wait until we go through a challenge in order to tap into it? Why is it that when it comes to seatbelts, let's say, I look around, I read the studies, and I know that I need to use seatbelts in my car for everyone's safety? Most people don't wait until they are in a car accident, God forbid, before they start using seatbelts. But when it comes to faith, and spirituality, most people, it's not enough for them to see their friend going through a crisis and turning to faith. It's only when they actually go through something. Sometimes it's a crisis, sometimes it's, it's not always an earth-shattering crisis, but people go through a difficult time or a big change. It's a new job, a loss of a job, a new relationship, a lost relationship, grieving. There's a lot of different things that shake people up and make them turn to faith. Why is it that suddenly, when it comes to faith, it takes a shakeup for people to get into it?
It's when you're most vulnerable, I think, often.
Right. So thank you. So when you're vulnerable, so then you kind of feel, I guess, like you need a support, you need something more.
Well, you have the ability to engage your senses, and I think probably Sarah Lawrence would speak more about this, the psycho aspects about this.
I like that line, that it helps you engage your senses when you're going through a crisis. This is really what the topic of chapter 29 is. Understanding what it takes to shake someone into faith, into feeling, into caring, and shaking off the apathy. Let's read it inside, at least the beginning of the chapter. Okay, chapter 29. Those whose souls are of the level of the Beinonim must seek means of contending with yet another difficulty. Now, to clarify, this is talking about the aspiring Beinonim, meaning we know that this whole book of Tanya is not written for the tzaddik. It's not written for someone who's all righteous and doesn't struggle. It's not written for someone who's not interested in bettering themselves and getting to a better place. It's written for the aspiring Beinoni, someone who's trying to figure out how to become the best I can possibly be. So this person, in previous chapters, we said they struggle with this and they struggle with that. There's a lot of things they struggle with. This chapter is going to address something else that they struggle with. Occasionally, and even frequently, they experience a dullness of the heart, as though it had turned into stone. And try as they might, they cannot open their heart in prayer, which is by definition the service of the heart. So the example that Tanya is citing is specifically the example of prayer. It's interesting that it cites an example of prayer. It seems to be that, for starters, Hasidus calls prayer the service of the heart. Praying is one of those things that you can do. You can go through the motions of praying, but real prayer is something that needs to really engage and inspire your heart. It needs to take all of those things it's our chance to take all the things we know and actually internalize them and make them real and make them part of us. And so prayer, I think we actually mentioned this last time, prayer is really an experience. Prayer, when done right, is an experience of connecting to God emotionally. And someone who's experiencing this apathy and dullness of the heart is struggling. They can't get themselves to get into it. So I think we can all find different areas in our life where we might connect to this idea of apathy. I mean, think of, for some people, it's prayer. For some people, it's something else. But when you know something, okay, you're studying Tanya, you're studying some other part of Judaism, something you really care about, it's really important, and you just can't get yourself to feel it. You can't get yourself to be inspired. Maybe that, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah is coming. You're like, what's wrong with me? How come everyone feels Rosh Hashanah, feels Yom Kippur? How come I can't feel it? Or maybe every year I feel it, and this year, just not feeling it. I feel like something's wrong. Sometimes it's with another mitzvah. Like, I can't get myself to care. I know if I had to write a book or an essay about why this is important and why I should do this and why, this is such a big part of Judaism, I could give a lecture, I could give a speech, I could write an essay, but I'm not able to get myself actually emotionally moved by it. And it's interesting because the examples that Tanya cites the example of prayer, and the other example it cites is trying to get myself, passionate about doing the right thing. And it's interesting. It's like, what what do you care? Like, what maybe the Tanya should just say, you're having a hard time doing the mitzvahs. You're having hard. So no, the Tanya specifically focused on emotion because we know that to be a healthy Jew, to have a wholesome relationship with God, we need to involve our emotion. We've discussed this many times before, but we've probably all met Jews who their Judaism to them is very, let's just say, a whole list of do's and don'ts, and they can't get themselves emotionally passionate and excited about it. And ultimately, we know that doesn't last. It's very hard to stick with a religion that's just do's and don'ts. Besides for the fact that God actually instructs us to love God with all your heart and with all your might. We're supposed to get heavily, deeply, emotionally involved in Judaism. So what happens when I don't feel it? What happens when I just can't get myself inspired? Let me just see where we are inside. Okay, so let's see, what is the Tanya suggesting? The Tanya is going to quote an interesting quote from the Zohar. The Zohar, let's just read it inside. Okay, in this case, the advice given in the Holy Zohar, the Zohar we know is the book of Jewish mysticism, is as the president of the Academy of Gan Eden, meaning the Zohar tells us that just as there are academies of Torah study down here on earth, there are also angels studying Torah in the Garden of Eden and in the spiritual realms. And the Zohar has this little quote where there's a discussion among the great academy of the Garden of Eden, and this is what this is a statement that the president of the academy makes. He says, a wooden beam which does not catch fire should be splintered. And similarly, a body into which the light of the soul does not penetrate should be crushed. And thereby the body becomes receptive to the soul's light, as the Zohar concludes. All right. What's the Zohar talking about? Crushing bodies? I mean, is the Zohar trying to tell us that we need to hurt ourselves, torture ourselves? Clearly not. Actually, there were fringe groups throughout Jewish history, specifically before the Tanya was written. There were some fringe groups that engaged in I don't even know what the term is, but like they would try to degrade their bodies in order to access their souls. Meaning, you can understand theoretically the logic behind it, right? If we say I have a physical body and I have a spiritual soul inside my body, these groups of people would they really wanted to like connect to their spirituality. So what did they do? They fasted for many days. Or sometimes they would do extreme things. They would like go into the forest and they would roll in the snow until it hurt. They would do different things to pain their body so that they could connect with their soul. And actually the author of the Tanya and even earlier the Baal Shem Tov came out very strongly against this and said that's not the way to go, because God gave us a soul in a body. He's expecting us to utilize our body. Our body is a vehicle for our soul. And we cannot have a healthy soul if we don't have a healthy body. There's an expression, I think it's from the Baal Shem Tov, but I don't want to misquote, where he said, a small hole in the body is a large hole in the soul. Meaning, if my body's not okay, my soul's not okay. I need to take care of my body. My body is the vessel that holds my soul. So back to the Zohar, what's the Zohar saying? So let's look at the example, the parable the Zohar is giving. The Zohar is saying, if I have a big block of wood, and those who've gone camping and built campfires, probably very familiar with this. If I have a big block of wood and I'm trying to get it to catch on fire, and it's just not catching, sometimes you have that log and it doesn't light up. So what do? You increase the fire, just not catching. One solution is take an axe, chip off some pieces of the wood, like splinter it, and suddenly the smaller pieces of wood start catching on fire, and eventually the whole log could go up in flames. Similarly, what the Tanya is explaining to us based on the Zohar is that just like that log of wood, why is that log of wood not catching on fire? Because it's very thick. It's very coarse. And somehow the fire is not able to really take over it. So when I splinter it and I make it into thinner, smaller pieces, the smaller pieces are able to catch on fire quicker and better. Similarly, sometimes if the fire is the spirituality and the holiness and the godliness, and the wood, the block of wood is my body or my heart or whatever the me is that I relate to. Sometimes I have a lot of fire in my head. It's like I understand these amazing things. Like we said, I could explain them. I could write essays about them, but I can't get myself to feel it. I can't get myself emotionally moved enough to like really get involved and make a change. So the parallel that the Zohar is drawing is just like that block of wood is just too thick. And that's why the fire is not catching. Sometimes the reason that my heart doesn't get on fire and involved is because it's too thick. It's too coarse. And upon further, if you read through the Tanya in detail, the Tanya says it really comes from the ego. Naturally, a person is sensitive to holiness. Specifically, a Jewish person with a Jewish soul is 100% sensitive to spirituality and to holiness. So how could it be that I could have a, nice Jewish person at the age of 45 years old or 15 years old and doesn't care for anything Jewish and doesn't care for anything spiritual? And we're like, hello, like, what's wrong with you? Or if I look at myself, how come I don't care? I used to care, or I think I care, but I can't get myself to care. But Tanya says that sometimes through tremendous self-indulgence, which most of us, thank God, lead a life where we indulge in a lot of physicality, it creates a certain sense of ego. And that ego that is governing myself and my emotions doesn't allow the holiness to set in. It doesn't allow the fire to catch. It's like my heart is kind of like that lump of wood that just doesn't allow the fire to catch. So what am I supposed to do? Just like with a piece of wood, you would splinter it. You would try to like knock through it to make it into smaller pieces so that it can start catching on fire. So too, I have to splinter at my ego. I have to get to my ego and just break it up a little bit. I need to realize that the real me, the deep down inside, the real me really cares and is really passionate and wants to do it and wants to get involved and wants to get inspired. The part of me that's not getting inspired, it's just that coarseness, the ego. And I need to work on splintering that ego in order to get myself excited and enthusiastic and emotionally involved. How do I splinter the ego? Well, what we're going to read soon in detail, but in general, what the Tanya's approach is, you sometimes have to have some real conversations with yourself. Generally, the Tanya's approach is very positive. So in this case, it's a little bit of a deviation. Not really a deviation, because in the big picture, you see where it falls. But this is one of the few times that the Tanya takes a little more of like a harsh approach. And the Tanya says, sometimes you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, get over yourself. Why do you think you're so good and you're so perfect and you're so great? Realize I'm not so perfect. I'm not so great. I'm not doing everything right. Allow yourself to break a little bit. Make some room in your heart. And as soon as you have that little bit of splintering inside you and a splintering of your ego, naturally, you're going to be able to get much more emotionally involved. Thoughts or questions before we read it inside? Yeah, Arlene.
I just wonder if when we started this, we talked about people who find themselves in situations of distress or trouble or anxiety, find themselves more open to feeling this. Is there the thought that perhaps there's a certain point where God feels like he needs to assist you in breaking through and allowing your ego to accept something that it might not have if you weren't exposed?
100%. I'm happy that you brought that up. We all know, we started this conversation saying that sometimes when we go through a hard time, we're suddenly more receptive to spirituality. So sometimes things happen to us that make us break our ego and make us more receptive. Here the Tanya's saying, don't wait for something to happen to you. You don't have to have such an inflated ego. You can be real with yourself, have some real conversations with yourself so that you're not walking around with this, what the Tanya calls like a clogged heart. I was listening to a teacher explain this part of Tanya, and he was saying that if we really look closely, typically the reason that we don't allow ourselves to get really inspired is because deep down or subconsciously, we're afraid of changing. You know, most of us are afraid of making changes. And there's a part of me that knows that if I get really inspired, it's going to make me want to do things that I haven't been doing. And there's a little discomfort involved in that. Like maybe I'm going to want to commit to, you know, doing more kosher. Maybe I'm going to want to commit to being more involved in my Jewish community. Maybe I'm going to want to commit to, you know, whatever it is that I haven't been doing until now. And it's a little bit of like a protective mechanism inside of us that kind of stops us from getting too passionate, getting too inspired. I tell myself, I'm really okay. Like, I'm okay. I'm a good Jew. This is what I've done for 45, 55, whatever amount of years. And it's okay. I can keep learning and my mind can be inspired and I don't have to let it really penetrate. And so here the Tanya's saying, let's be real. You need to let it penetrate your heart. It can't just stay in your head. You really need to get emotionally involved. You're not able to get emotionally involved. You're not finding yourself getting emotionally involved. Well, then look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, why do I think I'm so great and so perfect? And actually, the Tanya gives us some suggestions of things I might tell myself to kind of get me off that high horse and make me realize that maybe I should be open to a little more change and a little more involvement. Now, again, we have to take it with a grain of salt. The Tanya is not telling us to bash ourselves and to give ourselves, you know, speeches and to make ourselves feel bad and give ourselves anxiety. What the Tanya is, I would say it's kind of like a medicine. You know, take the medicine, it's a measured amount at certain times. You take it in order to achieve a certain result. Here the Tanya says, when you find yourself in a state that you're not able to get emotionally involved, look in the mirror and try to have a real conversation with yourself. Not every day, maybe not even every week, but you have to make room for that realness. Be raw and be real. And when you're honest with yourself, you can't keep the ego up. Like you can't. You're real with yourself and you know who you really are and you know you're not all that perfect. And it allows you, it opens you up, it humbles you and allows you to be open to something new and something different. Yes, Sarah.
Okay, so here's where I'm struggling. I thought this was all based on apathy. And so I'm not exactly getting apathy vibes from this. I'm getting maybe a self-defense mechanism, you know, fear. I'm sort of reluctant to take on something new. What I'm not understanding is, so okay, if I'm reluctant to take something and explore it deeply out of fear of, you know, doing something new, I was under the impression that that was actually a great thing because I can challenge myself to say, I'm not ready to do this. And because it's so hard for me to do this, because I don't quite understand the background or, you know, what this is all about, I was under the impression that that was like that because it's a hardship for me, that therefore I am awakening in my soul the idea that I am doing something for the sake of doing something good, even though I'm not comfortable with it per se.
So the Tanya actually, this was really my deviation. The Tanya doesn't talk about action here. The Tanya very much talks about emotion. The Tanya says, when you find yourself unable to get emotionally involved, that's the apathy. It's like I can't care enough to become passionate about it. And the examples that Tanya gives is praying. If I open up the prayer book and I can't arouse emotion in my prayer, then there's some kind of blockage. Something in my emotions is just not running right because I should be able to get emotionally involved. Maybe I'm not the type of person who's going to burst out crying and be, weeping all over my prayer book, but I should be able to arouse some level of emotion in prayer, in the Judaism that I'm involved in. I should be able to get emotionally involved. And if I'm not able to, then I need to figure out what's blocking it. And the solution to that is have a real conversation with yourself. It's really an underlying sense of ego that's stopping you from getting emotionally passionate. Does
I
that
hear that.
clarify it?
Yes and no, because again, my point was the whole argument of lefum tzara agra. So if something is more difficult to do, then that could arouse with literally without meaning to me this is almost like a different route. So if I can just use a different example, because it's hard for me to figure it out with prayer, but let's use your kosher example. I have to eat. So if I can figure myself out to say, look, I have to eat, so why don't I just do the kosher thing? Because then at least I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I don't understand it, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm air quotes supposed to do it. I'm apathetic. Should I not? I don't know. I don't care, but I'm gonna do it anyway just because it's a mitzvah, right? I thought that was gonna be like extra credit, if you will, because now I'm doing it for the mitzvah. I'm still apathetic. I still don't care about it per se, but at least I'm doing the thing, right? Because this is all action based.
No, I hear what you're saying. So what you're saying is we keep saying that Judaism is all about action. So even if I don't
Yes,
feel it, I still do it even if I don't feel it. So now why are we suddenly talking about feeling?
correct.
So you're right. It is action based, and the Tanya makes a big deal about things being action based. At the same time, the Tanya did spend a lot of time telling us that you need to bring your emotions into it. It doesn't mean that you won't act upon a mitzvah if you don't feel it, but it does mean that you need to awaken emotion in your service of God. Maybe I can't do it in kosher, but maybe I can do it in my Shabbat candles. Maybe I can do it in my study. Maybe there has to be a level of emotional involvement in my relationship with God. It can't
Oh,
just
across the
be by
board.
rote. Yes, in
Oh,
general. The Tanya is saying if I'm having a hard time arousing emotion, I study, I learn, I know that I should care about this stuff, but can't get myself to care. Maybe I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I mean, the Tanya is talking to a Benoni, an aspiring Benoni. This is someone who's really like doing what they need to do,
right.
but they just can't get themselves to care.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Lorraine.
Okay, so I have an example where something that I'm doing is both a mitzvah and not keeping, because I use my phone to call my boys and we light Shabbat candles together using a phone. So to me, and I know I always argue these, crazy things, but I think they matter. They matter. And it's why, like, I think probably different religious groups splintered off, right? So, Reformed, it's okay that I call my boys on the phone and do prayers, but like I'm listening to this and I'm like, yeah, I can't get motivated to not use my phone. I don't know. That one's jumping out at me right now. So I can't get motivated to do it because then I lose my children. And to me, it's way more important that I connect with my children on Shabbat. I don't know. So
So
I'm
I think you're touching on two different things here. You're touching upon a getting enough motivation to take on something that I don't feel ready to take on. And the
mhm,
other thing you're touching upon is if something doesn't sit right with me that the Torah
mhm.
says, then some people feel like they have the liberty to change it because, I could give a million reasons why, not people as in you, but you're saying, some movements or whatever say, well, you could definitely do that because it's in for the name of Shabbat. I mean, as far as I know, I think a lot of the same people who say it's okay to use your phone on Shabbat if it's to say prayers with your boys, I think they're also okay with turning on the TV on Shabbat for pleasure. Like, I haven't really seen that distinction. I think it's important to differentiate and say, I know what the Torah says.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to take it on yet. Versus, I know what the Torah says. I don't like it. It's not convenient for me. So let me just delete that part of the Torah. None of us do everything right, and none of us do everything perfectly. And it's totally okay for you to say, I know that's not ideal, but I'm not ready to take that on yet. Let me see something else that I could take on right now that I am ready to do. Does that make sense? Meaning, no one's gonna judge you or bash you for you're not ready to take this on. It's something you've always done. It means a lot to you. It's not something you were raised, any differently. And you're looking to increase in your Shabbat observance. I'm sure you can find something else within Shabbat that you are ready to take on. Eventually, I believe that one day you'll come to a place that you'll be ready to change that too. But if it's not now, it's okay. Like, focus on the things that you could do. I always like to tell people, look, take on positive things. Don't take on negative commandments. It's much harder to take on
Well,
negative
I think that's what's bothering me is that if I were to do that piece of the commandments or the mitzvot or whatever it is to not use your phone, I'm not even sure what it would be considered. But if I were to do that, it's actually punitive. It's not a positive. It would break my heart. And so to me, again, this is where like I don't know. I don't think God wants me not to be in touch with Jared on Shabbat because God knows Jared needs a little bit of Shabbat in his life and he's not getting it in Austin, Texas, and Cameron is now sitting right beside me. So the two of us, I don't know. I and I know that I have this very interesting relationship with God, but I don't think God wants me to be feeling punished on Shabbat that I'm not doing this one thing right. I don't know.
Right. So
So I
no, God doesn't want you to feel punished, but I have seen that typically when people take on positive mitzvahs and they get more inspired and more involved, the negative commandments kind of end up coming naturally. Like, I was just talking to a student who he actually just marked 1 year that this past Shabbat, he like called us up to say, I realize it's exactly 1 year since I started keeping Shabbat. And I remember speaking to him, just over a year ago, where he was trying to take on different elements of Shabbat, but actually very similar to what you're saying. He's a big journaling guy. And he's like, I just need to sit and decompress on Shabbat afternoon. And I'm, trying to study so much and I'm processing everything. And I don't think God wouldn't want me to journal because taking a pen and paper and journaling is a way of me processing and connecting to Shabbat and to all these amazing experiences that I'm having. And so we told him, like, it's okay, don't beat yourself up over it, but try to take on as many positive things as you can. So you're taking on, committing to going to Shabbat dinner every Friday night. Beautiful. And now you're starting to go to Shabbat, do Shabbat lunch every Saturday afternoon. Amazing. And now you're starting to do, the prayers also on Shabbat morning. And I remember at some point asking him, like, by the way, like, whatever happened with the journaling? And he started laughing. He's like, when you get so into Shabbat just becomes part of you, and it almost feels silly to be journaling. Like, he was like laughing at himself. He didn't have to actively say, I'm going to stop journaling. But the more he got involved in the positive side of Shabbat and made Shabbat just a part of his life, naturally the other things fell away. It actually reminds me, I know some people have additional questions, but it reminds me of a very beautiful story I once read about many years ago when the Lubavitch Rebbe came out with a campaign to have women and girls light Shabbat candles. So there was like a big deal made and there was a lot of, publicity about it. and someone published a book of stories of, oh, there was a contest for young girls to submit their stories about the effect of their experience lighting Shabbat candles, and then it was published into a book. So one of the stories in this book is this little girl writes that she was inspired. Her Hebrew school teacher, I don't know, someone told her to light Shabbat candles, and she was inspired to start lighting Shabbat candles. And her home was not a Shabbat observant home at all. And her parents were like, okay, fine, if you want to, we'll make room for you in the corner of the kitchen counter. You could light your candles. And she described there how, she lit her Shabbat candle every week, and her parents would watch. And then one week, and then they would do everything else normally, like a regular Friday night. And then one week, her parents were like, you know, Sarah's lighting her Shabbat candle, and like we have the TV on in the room. Like, it's not so nice. Like, let's look in honor of Sarah's candle, at least for the time the candle's burning. Like, let's turn the TV off so it feels more like Shabbat. And now that no one's watching TV, a few weeks later, they're like, so what are we gonna do? Oh, well, I mean, her Shabbat candle's burning, so why don't we like sit down and have a little family meal and, make some kiddush and eat some challah and, and then of course, a short while later, the mother was like, it's kind of funny that usually it's the mom of the house who lights the Shabbat candles, and here my daughter's lighting and I'm not lighting. You know what, Sarah? I'm going to start lighting with you. And, then the mom started lighting the candles with her. And she described like step by step how her starting to light Shabbat candles slowly transformed her entire family. Then like another family member said, well, if we do Shabbat, then why don't we do this? And if we're doing this, then why don't we do that? And before she knew it, her entire family got much more involved with Judaism, all because of her Shabbat candle. And I'm pretty sure actually the Rebbe quoted this story that this little girl wrote when he was, talking about the power of adding light. And that was generally his approach. His approach was always add light, it'll take away the darkness. Don't focus on eliminating darkness. Focus on adding light. I think similarly in connection to what you're saying, don't focus on what are the things I'm going to stop doing. Focus on what are the things I'm going to add. And you'll see that the more you add, some things will just fall off by the wayside. And I'm sure one day you'll come up with a beautiful solution. I've had to still be in touch with your boys and give them their Shabbat blessings. But maybe it'll be a few minutes before candle lighting. Maybe it'll be on Saturday night. After Shabbat is over, like you'll come up with a solution. But right now, just focus on adding positive. And I think also adding positive, like you said, that's where you can find passion. It's very hard to find passion in negative. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. But there's so much beauty and passion in, let me take this on. Let me take that on. Let me, make this nicer and make this better. What do you think?
I'm having a really hard time with where this went. I wasn't seeing, because I don't see it as dark. I see family as the brightest light of Judaism.
Absolutely.
So I don't
I'm sorry for
see,
that metaphor then.
yeah, I don't see reaching out to Jared and giving him some Judaism once a week as a dark thing.
Not,
I see it as such a bright thing. So
so absolutely. I'm happy that you said that. It's not dark. The example of dark and light was in the example of adding things or taking things away. Like, let's focus on the adding things. And as you add things, whatever needs to fall away will eventually fall away, and you'll find a way to transform it into a more Shabbat friendly version. Does that
Okay.
sit better with you?
yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, Lorraine.
That's okay.
Harriet, you want to say something?
I just lost
I
where
guess
we were.
where I was going with this is in terms of the month of Elul and how to get motivated to do the work, and about thinking about getting closer to God, not in terms of punitive and all the things that we've done wrong, but that just kind of framing this whole chapter as moving from kind of, I don't want to spend the next month going over all the things I've done wrong and being able to reframe it as it really is a chance to get closer to God. I'm kind of what you were saying in terms of the positive rather than negative. It's like how we frame certain things can either motivate us or create barriers.
100%. And I think that some people's experience with Judaism has always been very negative. Some people, the Judaism that either they were raised with or they got in Hebrew school or whatever was always, you can't and you shouldn't and you're not good if you do this. And really, Judaism, you know, like we said, if it's about a relationship, there's so much joy, there's so much positivity that, yes, we also have 365 negative commandments, but they're all within a framework of a relationship. And if you're just focusing on the do not, then you're not really getting the full picture. Whereas if you focus on the positive includes the negative. You know, focus on loving your fellow Jew, you will find yourself speaking a lot less gossip about others. But if your entire focus is on don't speak gossip, you might become a really snarky gossip police who's not very loving and kind to anybody. You know, like in all of the positive commandments, it's positive. There's a relationship, and the negative commandments are more of like guidelines and a framework because every relationship needs to have boundaries and needs to have the do not cross lines. But you can't get stuck in that. You know, we're not going to ignore it. It's definitely part of the mitzvahs. And as soon as someone's ready to take something on, you know, to stop doing a certain thing or stop eating a certain thing, good for them. But the passion, the emotion, I think most of us will find a lot more success in adding in the positive than, you know, deleting the negative commandments. Yeah.
I think for some of us that this period of a little leading up to the high holidays was a time of, oh, you have to come up with all the things that you've done wrong and all the things that you've done bad and that, you know, all the regrets and all the pain and, you know, rather than looking at it's an opportunity to get closer, to see ourselves in relationship to Hashem, that this is an invitation um, to figure out how we've lost who we are, and to reconnect with Hashem. And I guess that was kind of the switch in terms of, and the connection in terms of Elul is like, I guess, starting to think about it very differently in the last year or two.
100%. I agree with you. So many people have such trauma when it comes to high holidays. It's like, oh, the scary time. We're going to be judged. You know, we need to repent. Yes, it's true. There's a day of judgment. And yes, it's true. There's a certain awe that comes with high holidays, but it's not that fear. You know, actually, we were just discussing this on Shabbos. This upcoming Saturday night, the Ashkenazic world begins to say slichot, right? The Sephardic world has already been doing slichot since the beginning of Elul, but the Ashkenazi world begins this Saturday night. It's universally, it's done after midnight on the Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah, and in a year like this year, where Rosh Hashanah is in the beginning of the week, and we're not going to get enough days of slichot, we begin the week prior, which is why this upcoming Saturday night at 1 a.m. or 1:30 a.m., many synagogues will be opening their doors for the slichot prayer. So there's an expression among our sages that a person's, now, slichot prayer really opens up the high holiday prayers. I remember as a kid going to slichot, it was like you started hearing the high holiday tunes and everyone's like getting in their like serious modes. It's like, you know, this is our first trip to the synagogue because Rosh Hashanah is coming. There's an expression among our sages that says that a person needs to come to slichot shaking. That's like, what should the mode be? In a mode of shaking. I I mean, the English, the Yiddish expression is "Wackel dicker hate," with a tremble. You approach slichot trembling. So, for many people, or for many years, it was translated as, "Oh my goodness, you're supposed to come to slichot like terrified, like this is the time, you're coming, you're approaching high holidays." And the Hasidic interpretation was, wait a second, trembling doesn't mean trembling of fear. It could be trembling of emotion. You're supposed to come to slichot with emotion, like with fully there, with your heart all there, so that your body is not trembling in a way of terrified, but trembling as in your entire body is full of emotion and excitement, getting ready for the high holidays. So it's the same idea. Looking at it as like these no's and negatives and is a very shallow way of looking at our relationship with God. Our relationship with God is not, he's not this like punitive cop in the sky who's handing out tickets. Like we have a very robust relationship with God. He's our father and he's our king and he's our creator. And there's so many dimensions to this relationship. We can't get stuck in like the one piece. But back to close up our conversation. So we were saying that sometimes we can't feel emotion. I'm going to Slichot. I don't know. I can't feel it. I'm going into Rosh Hashanah. I don't feel anything. It just feels like a regular Tuesday and I'm almost like, in the mood of skipping. How do I get myself to feel it? So the answer that Tanya gives us here is you need a little bit of splintering. We'll discuss next time the second half of the chapter of exactly what the Tanya is recommending, but it basically says, give yourself a little pep talk so that your ego gets off of its, high horse. So for example, you could think of, okay, I relate to this obviously because I'm surrounded by kids all day, but sometimes you have a little kid who's doing the wrong thing. Or think back to when you were a kid and you did the wrong thing, and a grown-up had to come and give you a little talk. Now, if you think about, let's say the talk worked, right? They spoke to you and they had a serious conversation and then you stopped doing that thing. Did you stop doing it because they explained to you exactly, technically, rationally, logically, why you really shouldn't be climbing on the couch and doing this and why it's... Usually that's not the case. Usually you just need an adult in your life who looks at you and says, hey, cut it out. We're not doing that now, right? It's not the logic and the explanations that does it to you. It's just kind of being put in your place to be told in a very firm way. It could be very firm and very loving that says, stop it. We're not doing that now. And hopefully if you had, healthy adult role models in your life, then you had that because life needs boundaries, contrary to today's world where people think that adults are only supposed to tell the kids, oh, what made you feel like doing that? And, oh, well, I know you like to pinch your baby sister, but maybe we could think of pinching her. It's like, no, you just give them boundaries. Like, hey, we don't pinch our baby sister. That's not okay, right? Or, whatever the equivalent to that is. So what the Tanya's saying, you could give yourself the same kind of talk. Look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm not all that perfect. I've got my imperfections. Come on. It's okay. Open yourself up a little bit. And when you splinter yourself like that, when you kind of break up your ego, you suddenly find yourself so much more receptive just to that flow of emotion. I know we've quoted it many times in this class, but it's always worth quoting again, the quote from Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, who actually it's the full quote. We always quote one line of it, but Menachem Mendel of Kotsk had a saying that went like this: there's nothing as straight as a tilted ladder. There's nothing as black as white shrouds. There's nothing as whole as a broken heart. If you take a minute to analyze that, nothing as straight as a tilted ladder is not straight, right? So why is there nothing as straight as a tilted ladder? Think of like you're taking a ladder and you need to climb to the roof of your house. Are you going to have the ladder stand up straight at a 90-degree angle? Or are you going to kind of tilt it and lean it against the house so it actually is stable and can function as a good ladder? You don't want the ladder too straight because it's not going to achieve its purpose. The same thing as with the shrouds. You know, in Jewish tradition, people are buried in white shrouds. There's nothing as black as white shrouds, because unfortunately, the experience of dealing with white shrouds is emotionally a very black and dark experience. And similarly, there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. A heart that's not broken at all can't do what it's created to do. A heart is meant to feel, to receive emotion, to give emotion. A heart that's so hard and so closed up and so locked up can't feel and can't connect and really cannot function as a heart should. So a little bit of humility, whether it's in relationships with others, in this case, it's in our relationship with God, a little bit of humility, a little bit of splintering of the heart allows our heart to open up and allows the emotion to flow and allows us to get emotionally involved and really connected and inspired. I have time for one last story. There's I for sure said the story before, but there was a rabbi in some state in middle America. He tells a story. He said he was having doubts about his own faith. Now he's a rabbi and he has a congregation and he's feeling really guilty and stressed out that he's having doubts in faith. So who's he going to turn to for advice? Of course, he's going to call the Lubavitch Rebbe for help. So he calls the Rebbe's office, he speaks to the secretary, and he says, I can't tell you my name. I could only tell you what city I'm from, because he was embarrassed to give his name. But I need an urgent meeting with the Rebbe. I am a rabbi from this and this city. I'm having a crisis of faith. I must see the Rebbe. And so the secretary says, I hear you, but the wait list, the line to have a private audience with the Rebbe is about, 7 months. So I can get you an appointment in 7 months. He's like, no, it's a real crisis. I need you to help me out. It's like, okay, give me your name and phone number. I'll call you back soon. It's like, no, I can't give you my name or my phone number because I don't want you to know who I am. So he says, okay, the name of your city. Can you give me the name of your city? Okay, he gives him the name of his city. He says, call me back in 24 hours. Let me see what I can do. So the guy calls back 24 hours later, and the secretary says, I spoke to the Rebbe, and he said, you don't have to come. He told me that in your city, there's a rabbi by the name of so-and-so, the guy's own name. He said, go to him, and he'll get you through your crisis. So the guy, telling the story was obviously shocked. He asked again, like, what did the Rebbe say? He said, no. He said, go in your city. There's this rabbi, and he says his own name. And obviously the secretary didn't know he's talking to the guy because the guy never gave his name. And he'll help you. He said when he hung up the phone, he realized, he said he felt like I was shocked back into faith. I was going through this crisis, and I realized, if the Rebbe believes in me, then I'm going to be okay. And he says it didn't take, he was in a crisis of faith. It didn't take rational explanations. He didn't need to sit and read a philosophy book. He just needed to be like shaken up to say like, hello, you can do this. You got it. You know enough. Just get your act together. You'll be okay. And I think that a little bit sums up what chapter 29 is trying to tell us. Like, it's, if I can't get myself to feel and to care, then sometimes I just need a pep talk. Like, get over myself. Like, it's, and when I give myself that little talk and I feel just a tad broken and just a tad humbled, I'll find a lot more space to really feel and to connect emotionally. Thoughts or questions? I actually got a very interesting text earlier this evening that I thought was worth sharing. So most of you know, unfortunately today there was a bombing at a bus stop in central Jerusalem. Many people were injured and many people were killed. It was just a terrible situation. And I got this, I guess a forwarded text that somebody wrote. A woman who lived in Jerusalem wrote this text. I'm going to read it out loud. She wrote, Today God saved me. Today God saved me. She said, every morning at this exact time, I leave for work. I reach this particular junction. It's called Remote Junction. I catch bus 62 to the city entrance, and from there I take another bus that takes me straight to my office. The bombing was on bus 62. She said, this morning was different. Something stirred inside me, a sudden thought, almost like a crazy idea placed in my heart, that I wanted to pray at home properly. It's the month of Elul. I normally rush through my prayers on the bus on the way to work, and today I wanted to take the time to pray with focus. And that's what I did. And only after I finished praying, I got myself ready to leave. Just as I was about to leave my house, I got a call from my niece in Tel Aviv, her voice trembling. Auntie, are you okay? Are you alive? And I froze. And that's when her niece told her, you know, what had happened just moments before. And so she said, like when the realization hit her, she's like, my tears came and I whispered to my niece, I was supposed to be there. Today, God saved me. Today, God saved me because I chose to stop, to pray, and to connect. I thought that was very touching and powerful. We don't always get those aha moments when we see how God is leading our lives so carefully every single step, but sometimes we really see it. And I thought it connected nicely to our discussion about, you know, God guiding our steps so carefully and our, you know, taking the time to invest in prayer. So we should only hear good news and happy things. And we'll see you all next week, God willing. Feel free to stay on if you have something to ask or discuss.
Thanks, Deanie.
I mean,
Bye-bye.
thank you. I sent some notes in the chat, Deanie. Do you get those?
Yeah, I'm looking right now.
Oh, okay. I often do that, but then I forget about it later.
Yeah, it's funny. I sometimes see them come in the middle, and if they're very short, I read them. And if they're more than like 3 words, then I often don't read them. And then I turn off the thing and I was like, hey, wait, someone posted a comment in the middle and I didn't get a chance to read it. So I
I don't like